Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today, if you don't usually look at the screen when you listen to me, if you just listen to me, I want you to take a look at the screen just quickly. And I want you to see what I'm talking about today. And it's only partially what I'm going to talk about, but this is a picture that I took from my comic store that I was in last Wednesday, and I saw it and I knew I just had to take a picture of it and that I had to do a video on it. And it's a little golden book of Marvel's Avengers versus Thanos. So it's basically the Infinity Gauntlet in a little golden book form. Now, when I took this picture, I was thinking, well, I should do a video on it, but I really didn't have enough to do a video on it, so I put it aside. And there was something else that I was thinking about doing a video on, but really didn't have enough to do a video on, and that's the fact that as I'm going through my older books that I'm buying out of my dollar box, because I'm buying stuff basically from 2000 forward and I'm getting full runs of things, I noticed that there was a big push, and there's still a bit of a push, not as big as it used to be, but there's still a push to try to get people to move away from actually buying comics in the physical form and just to buy digital comics. And I didn't have enough to do anything on either of those two by themselves. But then something happened yesterday that sort of tied it together in my mind. And the thing that happened yesterday is that Marvel Entertainment Group has now announced that it is going to publish Marvel characters and new Marvel stories through IDW. Yes, if you haven't heard by now, I'm sure there's probably a lot of videos out there by now, but if you haven't heard by now, there are going to be Marvel characters published by Disney through someone other than Marvel Comics. So I'm going to put the link in the description for the article that I read about this, which was Bounding into Comics. I'm sure, again, there's probably going to be other videos where they're just going to sit there and read the article. I'm not entirely sure why they do those kinds of videos. Just link me to the article and I can read it myself. It'll take you about 2 minutes. There's not very much there. But the thing is that this is something I do believe that's a bit unprecedented. Now, there have been other formats where they have allowed people to, both Disney and Marvel, to publish comics of their superheroes just here and there, for promotional things. But this is going to be a full line of comics with Marvel heroes in them outside of Marvel Comics. So I do believe, as the article says, that the first character to be published is going to be Spider-Man. It's going to be Peter Parker Spider-Man and Miles Morales Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen, which it looks to be like a telling of a story from the perspective of the new movie that's coming out, which is Into the Spider-Verse, which is basically like a Pixar movie. So it's not going to be a live action movie. So one of the things to note about this is that the people who are going to be publishing through IDW are not Marvel Comics themselves. So it's going to be Disney through Marvel Entertainment Group. And Marvel Entertainment Group is a separate wing of Disney than Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics deals with the comics, and it deals with, I do believe, also the shows for Marvel, but Marvel Entertainment Group deals with the movies. So these characters that are going to be published, Marvel characters that are going to be published outside of Marvel in IDW, are going to be from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So what does this have to do with the other two things that I'm talking about? Well, I want to try and tie them a little bit together. When I looked at this little golden book of Marvel heroes, which was a retelling, which was just it's just basically it's Infinity Gauntlet, but it was for the age group that you would have a little golden book for, which is about, I'd say 2 to 4 year olds, right? So I thought to myself, this is the future of Marvel Comics. I'm looking at the little golden book because that's a publishing of Marvel heroes outside of Marvel Comics. That's a publishing of those heroes in another format with a story sort of its own. And that's the thought that hit me. This is the future of Marvel Comics right there. An unimaginative retelling of an old story, just some ways for nostalgia and others for little children. Certainly not for the audience that buys mostly Marvel books right now. And the other thing was the digital sales. For the digital sales, I've been noticing the push to get people to buy digital sales, and quite specifically how they went about pushing for digital sales. They went about pushing for digital sales by putting a little thing in your comics that you buy saying, hey, look, you can have a free copy of this comic because you bought the digital copy. Now, the thing is that if you know anything about economics, you know that no company is ever going to give you anything for free. There's always a catch. Always. No exception. So when someone gives you something for quote unquote free, basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to move their customer base to do something specific. And I would say certainly you can say about 90% certainty that what they're trying to do, what Marvel's Disney is trying to do, what they were trying to do and still are, is to move people away from buying copies of the actual books to buying digital copies. They don't want to publish books anymore. They want you to buy digital. But unfortunately, if you look at the digital sales, you can see that, well, I wouldn't say unfortunately, not unfortunately for me. I think it's actually a good thing. People don't want to buy digital. At the very least, they didn't just automatically jump over there because they were given something free. Now, there is a fair number of digital sales, but compared to actual hard copy sales, it's not very big. So people didn't just move over to digital. And if you're looking at the numbers for digital sales, numbers for sales of comic books, physical books are down, but so are numbers for digital sales. So it really didn't take off like they were hoping it would take off. So to go back a little bit into Disney's history, just quickly to talk about what they're trying to do here. If you don't know Disney's history, they tried to, Disney, this was back in the 90s, so long before they bought Marvel, they tried to publish their own comic line back, I think it was between 1991 and 1993. They came out with their own comic line, and they specifically made it to imitate Marvel, and they wanted, again, as I was talking the other day about Image, their intent was to take over the market. Their intent was to bury Marvel and DC and to become the only man left standing. And they thought that that's what they were going to do with their comic line, but it failed miserably. And Disney learned from that and from other small bunch of incidents that they don't want to be publishers. They quickly, within a span of 3 years, with this line dying, learned that they don't want to be in the publishing business. And ever since then, they've made sure they're out of the publishing business. And quite simply, it's easy to see why Disney doesn't want to be in the publishing business. It's because Disney just uses cash cows. It just wants to make money hand over fist. That's the way that Disney operates. If they can't make money hand over fist, then they're not going to do it. And when you publish something, well, you got two problems. One, you got to deal with the customer base, and you got to sort of have a feedback from your customers and put your product out based upon that feedback. You know, the thing that should be happening with Marvel Comics right now, but isn't. That's one of the things that need to be done. And Disney, don't want to expend the energy or the money to do that because that takes away from their profit. Trying to spend all this money to placate their audience, to give them what they want, to find out what they want and then give it to them, that takes resources. They don't want to do that because, well, they're taking away from their profit there. Usually they deal with things like the example that I have heard about a number of times is T-shirts. Everybody, they're going to sell T-shirts with Disney stuff on them. They don't need to do any market research. They're going to make money hand over fist. They'll put the newest thing on it so that everything is available, and they'll have a number of colors and they'll have a number of sizes, but they don't need to talk to their customers about how to make a T-shirt. They just pump them out there and they just make money off of them. But they can't do that with a publishing company. The other thing is that publishing itself costs money. You got to buy the paper, you got to buy the ink, you got to do the printing, you got to do all of those things. And again, that cuts down on your profit, and they don't want anything to cut into their profit. So they don't want to be a publisher anymore. They learned that lesson back in the 90s. So ever since that happened, Disney has quite specifically still made comic books, but they've allowed their comic characters to be published by other publishers. They just license out their characters so that the publisher, who they have usually strict control over what kinds of stories they publish, those publishers take all the risk. Those publishers are the ones that have to deal with the customers. Those publishers are the ones that have to deal with the printing costs and the paper costs and the ink costs and all of these other things. So Disney just makes money out of it. They don't have to deal with any of the other stuff that is taking away from their profit. All they want to do is make money. So this is what people have surmised that Disney wants to do also with the Marvel group, with the Marvel comic group. And I want to talk about this and tie these things all together because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there speculating about this, what this means, and about the fact that maybe they're yelling the sky is falling and Marvel Comics is just done for. But I think we need to be a little more hesitant about jumping to that conclusion and see what we can prove, or at the very least what is most probable is going on here now with Disney putting out these books through a company that isn't Marvel Comics. So first of all, I think it shows two things that are shown already by that little golden book and by the digital sales. Right off, it shows that Disney does not want to be a publisher. Quite specifically, it does not want to be a publisher. So yes, they are going to try to get rid of publishing one way or the other. Because another of the golden rules of economics is you don't compete with yourself. And why, if they wanted to publish something, would they not simply say to Marvel Entertainment Group, go to Marvel Comics and publish them there, because they have their own publisher. And they can certainly do that. It's just one wing of Disney talking to another wing of Disney. But they didn't do that. They went to IDW. And IDW is competing with Marvel Comics. So basically, they're competing with themselves. And a company who's economically smart does not compete with itself. But Disney is an economically smart company, and it is now going to compete with itself. So there must be another reason why they're going to do this. There must be a reason that is going to make them more money, that overrides that basic economic instinct of don't compete with yourself. And the most probable reason that comes to the forefront is that Disney is showing us here with this move that no, they don't want to be publishers. That old story from the 90s where they told everyone that they don't want to be publishers anymore and they took that route, they're still of that mindset. So they don't want Marvel Comics. They don't want it anymore. And to feed into one of my other videos, what I was saying that I do believe that for myself, I believe that Disney is trying to get rid of Marvel Comics. They're trying to drive it into the ground. so that because Marvel Comics is part of Americana and they can't just shut it down. They can't just say there's not going to be any more Spider-Man comics because that would upset people a lot. They can't just rip the characters out from the comics, put them into the movies and say we're never going to publish anything anymore. Too bad, so sad for all you people who read comics. And I thought that that was going to happen specifically just by them driving Marvel Comics into the ground and having it become a joke. But I didn't foresee is what is happening here is that they're going to offer you an alternative so that supposedly, in my view, when these books start coming out and in their hopes they want them to do better than the Marvel Comics from Marvel Comics themselves, then they're going to have an alternative so they can say, hey, look, we are going to close down Marvel Publishing for Marvel Comics. But we already have this avenue open here where you're going to get Spider-Man. And so there'll be less of an uproar about Marvel Comics being closed down. Now that's just my opinion there. I think that's the most probable reason of what's going on and why they're going to start competing with themselves for a market. Because again, economically smart companies don't do that unless they have an ulterior motive. And the other thing being that if this is going to happen, if this is the intended plan for Disney, it's going to come out in one way in the future. That is to say, there's a really good indicator to say that this is the specific path they're on. And the very good indicator will have to wait till the future to see if this comes up. If Disney puts money into, a lot of money, into the advertisement of these new Disney comics, then you can positively say that, yes, this is the avenue which they're going to go down. That they do want to, we know, most probably just get rid of Marvel Comics. It's not even an assumption anymore. It's just basically what they're doing. Because if you look at the things that are going on with Marvel Comics and Marvel Entertainment Group, which are both two wings of Disney, the problem is that you could very easily be marketing Marvel Comics. With all the stuff that's going on with the Marvel Entertainment Group, with the movies, there could be a massive push for let's sell Marvel Comics. But Disney's not doing that. You know, there could be tie-ins with the movies, massive amounts of tie-ins with the movies and the comics. I mean, it used to be that whenever a movie came out, you automatically had a comic copy of it on the stands as well. Things like Star Trek, right? When they used to have their movies coming out, say Star Trek 3 and things like that, they automatically, when the movies came out, had a copy on the shelves for the comics. Marvel did that. They were good at doing that. They weren't the best comics in the world, but they knew how to do that, and they did it, and it was an extra advertisement that took the two genres and linked them together so that one fed into the other and one was an advertisement for the other. And that should be happening right now, but it's not. And if I don't know why, except for the reason that they don't want Marvel Comics publishing anymore, why in the world Disney would not, when it ships off its merchandise or license its merchandise or puts out merchandise for the movies, doesn't include comic books in this. That would be the easiest way to sell Marvel Comics and to boost its sales and to make money with it, is to take those comics and say, hey, listen, we have this movie coming out. Somehow get some of these comic books, which are being published by Marvel Comics, into the movie theaters so that they're there with the magazines that you usually find for movie magazines, and people can just pick them up, even if they're just for free, you know, to pull other people into Marvel Comics. But that's not happening. Disney is ignoring all of these opportunities that they could use for trying to advertise for Marvel Comics and to boost their sales. And if they are ignoring boosting the sales of Marvel Comics themselves, but start quite deliberately putting effort and money into advertising these new comics, then you know which horse they're going to back. They are already backing it if they do that. We will have to see how much of a push they put on for advertising for these new Marvel comics that are going to come out of IDW. So, not a whole lot of giant revelations with this video. I just wanted to tie a couple of those thoughts together and to talk about it in more of a sense of probabilities of what is going to happen rather than screaming the sky is falling and Marvel Comics is doomed, which I think a couple of other people are probably going to do. And I think we need to look at it that way and just be prepared for the fact that this is what's going to happen if we look at the company's movements and we can surmise what's going to happen. Now, does this mean that Marvel Comics Group is going to be doomed? I don't think so. Personally, I don't think so, because I've seen, again, things published in other comic forms that just didn't work out. It never really worked out. The only way that this will work out, I think, is if Disney puts a massive push into publishing and advertising for these new books. But the one thing that I think I can positively say is that these new books coming out from IDW, they will not be Marvel books. They will be Marvel characters, but they will not be Marvel books. What do I mean by that? Again, as I said on one of my other videos, Marvel used to be the house of ideas. You used to get great comic ideas, great comic characters coming out of Marvel. It was the house of ideas. That was their slogan. But these new books will not be anything of the kind. They'll be just like that little golden book, like a rehashing of old stories, most probably for very young children. There will be nothing new, and it will be a version of, a Donald Duck or a Mickey Mouse kind of book that doesn't go anywhere. And it's not even going to be a retelling of stories. It's going to be just a regurgitation of stories from the old Marvel comics. So it's going to be a pale imitation, and nothing new is ever going to come out of it. And that is the kind of audience that Disney wants, so that they don't have to deal with it, because they are, again, a company who simply wants to make money hand over fist, and dealing with customers takes away from what you have to do to make money. So I don't think that they're going to be anything that any comic buyer right now is going to want and will only buy for collector's sake. And again, I think another good indication that the only reason that their only target audience will be for little kids is the quality of the story and who it's built towards. But secondly, if they are going to appeal to comic buyers right now, they're just going to be through variant covers and gimmicks. Nothing to do with good stories at all. I don't know whether or not it's going to be as SJW driven as the other Marvel comics. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's just going to be a cash grab, using and regurgitating old stories and nothing new, which, yes, would signal the end of Marvel as any kind of independent universe on its own. It's just going to be stories that you already know. Nothing new. All right. Well, hopefully I pulled together a little bit these ideas in your mind and given you something new to think about. Again, that's why I wanted to do this video, just to pull these things together in my mind. And hopefully we will follow this story and see if we can come to any more conclusions, any more probable conclusions about what's going to happen to Marvel in the future. All right. If I did give you something new to think about, hit like, hit subscribe, share the link. That would be great. You could share the link, share these ideas with other people, and make comics better with our ideas and sharing our ideas. All right. I'll see you later. Bye.